Hello and welcome to the new podcast, Copper's Corner podcast. This is a music history podcast where every episode I'll be talking to a guest about one of their favourite singers, talking about the history of that singer, the influence of the singer on the guest, and the guests themselves. And this week, I'm delighted to be joined by the fantastic Irish country singer, Aishling Rafferty. How are you doing, Ashling?
Hey, I'm good, thanks. How are you, Copper?
I'm very good. Thanks for joining me on my first episode into this. We're venturing into the wild here and we'll see how we get on anyway.
Exactly. It's a privilege and an honour anyway to be your first guest. And thanks very much for having me on.
No problem at all. Thank you very much for having me on. I was going to say thanks very much for coming on.
Hey, no problem.
So anyway, before we get into the whole subject matter, which is Tammy Wynette, that's the person we'll be talking about this week. Before we get into it, you can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram. It's Copper's Corner Podcast, and you will see updates from me about the podcast. You'll have links to the likes of Ashling and other guests that we're having on. And also, I'm going to create a Spotify playlist that'll contain some of the music of the artists that we're talking about. So after the podcast, you can go and listen to the Spotify playlist and listen to some songs of Tammy Wynette and whoever else we're going to talk about in the future. But Ashling, do you want to tell the people where they actually can find you on the socials?
Yeah, of course. So my Instagram is very basic and plain. It's just Aishling Rafferty, so you can't go wrong there. And then my Facebook and my YouTube are Aishling Rafferty Music. And then as well, I do a radio station as well. I do a radio show. And you can find all that on my Facebook page, which I said is Aishling Rafferty Music. So yeah, there you go.
Brilliant. Fair play. And do go and follow Aishling there because she's very active. She has a latest single that came out recently was Thank You.
Thanks to you.
Thanks to you. God, it just absolutely fell out of my head there the second I started to say it. But thanks to you. When did you release that one, Ashling?
I released that song about 3 weeks ago, and I brought the video out about a week and a half ago, and it's after getting over 100,000 views already, which is fantastic. Wow. So thanks very much to everyone who's watched it, if any of you are tuned in. And yeah, the single went great for me and still going great. It's getting loads of radio airplay, and it went straight to #1 on iTunes as well, which is brilliant. And I can see the listeners are going up every day on Spotify as well, which is brilliant. So of course the song was wrote by John Farry as well, and he is fantastic. So big shout out to him as well.
Yes, that's fantastic. I'm delighted with your success of that one. That's amazing now to go. But you're not new to this whole scene. You've been going a few years now. When did you, I suppose, release your first single?
I released my first single about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. So obviously I'm only 19. I'll be 20 now shortly as well. So started off, I was always involved in music, loved all sorts of music in school. I was always singing in the plays and, stuff like that in choirs. Yeah. So I absolutely loved it. And, the radio would be on every day of the week, every hour of the day with Tip FM playing or Tip Midwest. And you'd be hearing, Declan Ernie, Louise Morrissey, the whole Ashling you'd be hearing on the radio. So obviously I took a shine, I couldn't really miss a bit. And my brothers and sisters were playing music and singing as well. So I just kind of fell into it. And then in 2019, I applied for the Cowboys and Heroes Country Star competition.
Yes.
And
it's like
I got
a singing competition for those that don't know, I suppose. Singing competition based in the Midlands, is it?
No, it's actually at Cowboys and Heroes in Drumcora and Leitrim.
Leitrim.
Yeah, it's kind of like an American kind of country music festival.
Yes.
So that was absolutely great. You got to sing on the big stage, and there was some fantastic singers singing on that stage as well. That week, like Nathan Carter, Chantel Padden was there, Robert Mazel, the whole Ashling. So even to get on the stage was huge for me. But it was a fantastic experience, and it really, I have to say, it kickstarted my career. And I do owe a lot to Cowboys and Heroes, so I do. And then ever since that, things have just kind of taken off now. It was unfortunate with COVID and stuff the way it happened. But I suppose for me as an artist who wasn't out gigging every week, it gave me a lot of time, to release music, record music, get to know loads about the music industry and stuff like that. So I suppose I was kind of lucky in that sense, with COVID. So
absolutely.
Yeah, and here I am today.
Yes. You're on the world famous Copper's Corner podcast. Look at you now.
Exactly.
But yeah, fair play to you. And so tell us about this radio show you got. I think I seen it, you only got there recently, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that we were talking about it for a while, myself and Mike Gleason of Down the Road Radio, and he's great shows on, and he's a huge supporter of my music as well. So when he asked me, I was just thrilled to do it. It's great, and I'm learning so much from it. And even with college as well, I'm studying music in college, so kind of all goes hand in hand. And I'm finding new music every day to play, and there's people sending me music, and it goes out every Friday at 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock, and every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. So it's actually on now when we're recording. So it's a repeat on a Tuesday. So I'm loving every second of it. And you can send me on your music copper. And if any other musicians or singers are tuned in or anything as well, you can send me your music. I'd only be delighted to play it. And my email is ashlingdowntheroadradio@gmail.com. So
brilliant. I'll put it down in the description as well as your socials as well. So if anyone looks at the description of this video or the podcast, you go down to the description, you see the link there. But fair play, that's amazing. And do you do the radio show live, or do you pre-record and put it out? Or what
at the moment now, I'm pre-recording it because I'm going to be back to college now in about 2 weeks. So I'm pre-recording to try have them ready to go, that sort of way, rather than because when I'm in college I won't be able to. So that's the way I'm doing it.
Sense that way, more practical.
Exactly. Sense. Yeah. And then when I get my summer holidays and stuff, I'll be going live and all that sort of crack. So for the moment, that's how I'm doing it, and it's working great. And I'm getting to know all the technology. I know I'm not very tech savvy, but I'm getting there. So I am.
Oh, you get there. Yes, absolutely. What's the name of the show? I think it's something similar to the name of this podcast.
Ashling's Country Corner.
There we go.
Yeah,
that's fair play. I'll share the corner part with you. It's okay. It's no problem.
We won't fight over it now.
But tell us, who are we actually going to be talking about today?
The one and only Tammy Wynette.
That's it. And she's one of your favorite singers, I'm assuming, anyway.
She's my favorite American singer now, I have to say, would be Tammy Wynette. And obviously I absolutely love Irish country music singers as well, like Trudy Lawler, Louise Morrissey, that kind of genre.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then people as well, they'd be my favourites now, so they would, Yeah,
and what I suppose what attracts you to Tammy Wynette's music?
I feel she's very unique, and I don't get me wrong now saying this, but I feel like she's kind of her own person. She's not doing this big blonde,
Yeah.
I think that's what stands out to her, or for me, with Tammy Wynette. I think she's very unique. There's nobody like her, nobody sounds like her, and I don't think people are trying to sound like her either, because they wouldn't really be able. That sort of way. That's a
good point, actually, because she does have this particularly heard it described as a cry in her voice, I suppose. It's very unique.
Exactly. And you can really feel her emotions in every song. And, some of her songs are like extremely, extremely emotional, like Till I Can Make It On My Own or Stand By Your Man. And, you can really, really hear it in her voice. It's kind of raw, like.
And I suppose it does reflect on her actual life as well, because I suppose for this first episode, we're having a heavy hitter in regards to her history, because it's a very tragic story in a way, full of lots of ups and downs. And I don't know how much you looked into her backstory now before we went into this, but I looked into it myself, and my God, it's it's something else anyway. She's been, was it married 5 times, I think it is?
5 times, yeah.
Yeah. And to
George Jones being one of them.
I think he was the 4th husband.
Yeah.
we'll go through it anyway. But he's a story in himself, that guy. He's one of my favorite country singers as well. And he has his own demons and stories behind him as well. Yeah. But I suppose we'll start of Tammy Wynette's life. She was born in 1942, which is around kind of midway through World War II, which was wouldn't be the great time to be living. But she was actually born, her name was Wynette, or Virginia Wynette Pugh. The Tammy was actually a stage name that was added on later, but we get to that. But she grew up on a cotton farm in Itawamba County in Mississippi. That's Itawamba. Nice name.
Twister.
Yeah. She grew up on a cotton farm, and her father died. First of all, first tragedy, if we'll have to have a counter here, her father died of a brain tumor when she was less than a year old, and so she didn't have her father in life. But apparently he was a well-renowned musician in his own right, and he actually encouraged Tammy's mother to kind of introduce her to music and kind of encourage music in her life.
I wasn't actually aware of that now.
Yeah. So so it was just her and her mother growing up for a long time, and then when she turned 7, she started picking cotton out in the fields, and so like I can kind of relate to that in a slight way. I'm from Wexford, and do you know what's the main strawberries? Exactly. I grew up picking strawberries, so I was probably like 7, 8, 9. I can't remember exactly.
Yeah.
Every summer, as soon as school was out, into the strawberry field I was, back-breaking work. But apparently, as hard as strawberry picking is, cotton picking is at next level. It's actually, this is like the soft plant, or soft end product, you could say anyway. But it's pretty fucking hard to take off the branches, and it can callous your hands, and it's not an easy job for a
7-year-old girl. No.
Yeah. Did you ever do anything like that yourself? Do you ever have any hard labor in the fields when you were a kid?
Well, we used to have a big pot. Now I'm going to sound like such a big softie now saying this, but we used to have a polytunnel, and now this is so minor and so minor compared to Tammy Wynette, so this will sound really dramatic, but there was the drills for planting stuff and all this stuff. It's like picking stones out of that, but honestly it was nothing.
Look, that's
I sound really dramatic.
Picking stones, that's a back-breaking job as well. So I suppose you have that in your checklist in your book anyway. Hopefully there'd be nothing more of what's coming forward going on. But no,
5 husbands,
but yeah, she when the family had a bit of money, she actually started taking a few music lessons. So she learned accordion, and I think a bit of piano and a bit of guitar. So she was well into music when she was at a young age, so probably in her early teens, I guess. And do you actually play it yourself, Ashling?
I do, yeah. I play the guitar, and I learned the piano in college as well, keyboard piano. So I wouldn't be a master at it just yet. It's all kind of classical stuff and concertos and all that stuff that I wouldn't really be into it. But I'm learning it and getting there slowly but surely with the guitar now as well. I wouldn't be fantastic, but I can strum along, accompany myself and stuff like that. So yeah.
That's half the battle. As long as you
exactly now you said it.
Playing and singing at the same time is a tricky thing to learn. So you're grasping, getting the hang of it anyway. So that's half the battle. So yeah, keep at it. Like that's all you can do is keep at it, keep practicing. I'm playing guitar 20 years and I still, I could be way better. But that's life.
There's always room for improvement, as they say.
Exactly. Always. But she actually married first husband, number 1. We'll write that off there now. Her first husband at the age of 17. So I think just before she graduated from high school, as they have over there. And he has a great name. It's Yupel Bird. Yupel, E-U-P-L-E. I've never heard. That's the first time I ever heard that name. And so she actually had her first 2 children with Yupel, and the children were named Gwendolyn and Jacqueline. And but the thing is, they weren't very well off at all, and they actually lived in a shack. Like when you picture a shack in your head, this is probably worse than what you can picture. I think they had like cardboard for insulation and no indoor plumbing, and it was very, very rough. And apparently, like living in the house caused so much stress to Tammy. She had an emotional breakdown, and she was actually treated with electroshock therapy, which was obviously now was a very outdated treatment.
Yeah.
But later she discussed it and she said they were horrible, but they helped me. So I don't know. It seemed to help her, I guess. But yeah. That's like when you see like an old like horror film and set in an asylum or something. You see obviously the 2 buds at the temples and it's horrible. And,
I did not know that about Tammy Wynette either.
Yeah. And this is only the start of her troubles. My God, we are still only getting started. But yeah, feel free to interject with any knowledge you might have as we go as well. But yeah, so in her late teens, she became a beautician. She went to beauty school and she became a licensed beautician.
And a hairdresser.
Yes. And later in life, actually, when she, I suppose, made it, quote unquote, she, in her house, she basically had a beauty salon next to her sitting room. And she always kind of kept her beautician license.
Yeah.
Up to date.
Something I found unusual. Oh, sorry, Carl. She was always wearing wigs, brunette wigs, but she was a hairdresser. It's like, you know, yeah, she was always wearing wigs, which I find kind of strange because she was a hairdresser. So,
yeah,
you know, maybe it was easier, maybe it was handier.
Was it maybe like on stage? You mean? Because
when she was performing, she always had a wig on. I suppose Dolly's the same as well. Like,
yeah. Well, Dolly's another story altogether.
Yeah, we'll leave that for another podcast.
Yeah, that could be another podcast. But apparently, yeah, people are saying when she starts singing, she wants to become a country singer. And a few people, her classmates, said she was lousy, real twangy, and never in a million years would have thought that girl would amount to anything, they said.
That's harsh.
That's very harsh. And she'd go on to actually become the queen of country music, which I don't think we've said already, but she's like,
considered the queen, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, it says here, yeah, even after she became a superstar, she kept her beautician's license up to date because, you know, being a musician isn't the most reliable form of making a living.
Exactly. I think we've all seen that in the last 18 months as well.
Absolutely, yeah. We're still, 500 days out of,
music,
you know, gigging, whatever, you know, so it's kind of
crazy.
It's tough. Exactly. And that's not even accounting for just not making it, let's say, you know what I mean? So it's kind of, she had that as a plan B, like something she could fall back on just in case. So basically, after she earned her beautician's license, she left poor old Youple and moved to Birmingham. But she actually left Youple. While she left Youple, she was pregnant with their third daughter. And after she left them, she moved to Birmingham, Alabama, and gave birth to Tina, who, again, more tragedy. She's born prematurely and born with a bout of spinal meningitis. So the baby almost didn't survive, but thankfully she did. But apparently Tammy was saddled with about $6,000 worth of hospital bills, which back in those days, $6,000,
a lot of money.
A lot of money. And so she was working as a beautician. Her marriage was dissolving, but she actually got a gig at a local television program called The Country Boy Eddie Show, where she earned $30 a week. So that goes to show how much a dollar is worth
compared to the $6,000.
Exactly. And she was actually renting an apartment for $10 a week at the time as well. So it's crazy that kind of money. So she was paying off that for a long time. And so, yeah, apparently though, playing at this local TV show, she didn't get any interest in her music or her singing or her in general. So she kind of kept getting rejections when she kind of, you know, reached out to other people and all this kind of stuff. But she actually went to Nashville. She said, "Fuck it now. I'll have to make it or break it." So she went to Nashville. And I think we'd all love to go to Nashville at some point. I'd say you would as well, Ashling.
Exactly, yeah. I was planning on going last October, the end of October, start November, and then obviously COVID came and that wiped that out. But hopefully now when things get, you know, kind of lifted up again and back to normal, please God, I'll take a venture. I might go and never come back, who knows? But I know, I'm only joking. I'd love to go out just for a holiday, you know, see what it's all about, you know, that sort of way, and come back to my roots.
That's it. Go visit like the Grand Ole Opry and
Brian
records.
Things you dream of, you know.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be amazing.
Have you ever been?
No, I've never been now, but geez, I'd like to go and have a visit anyway, at least, and maybe try to get a few old gigs in a honky tonk or something, you know, that'd be class. And I'll get an old chicken wire in front of me and get people firing bottles at me like, you know, the Blues Brothers. You're not film.
Not at all.
But anyway, she went to Nashville and she met with a producer called Billy Sherrill, and who actually liked her voice, which is apparently one of the first people who said that they liked her voice. So her look changed, as I said. But he asked her, "What's your professional name?" So she didn't really have a professional or, you know, a stage name. So her name was Virginia Wynette Pugh. So she basically took the name Tammy, as apparently it resembled a character played by Debbie Reynolds in the movie Tammy. And Billy Sherrill allowed her to keep Wynette. That was so nice of him. So
How kind.
How kind. So she became Tammy Wynette. And she recorded her first song, which I think was a Johnny Paycheck song. It's called Apartment Number 9. Are you familiar with this song at all?
I am. And a girl, actually, Lorraine MacDonald, an Irish girl, she does a fantastic version of this. It's unreal.
Yeah, very good. I must look it up. It's
brilliant.
Class. And Johnny Paycheck is one of my favorite country singers as well. He has Take This Job and Shove It and all this kind of stuff. So maybe someday I'll do a podcast on him as well.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so he was actually, I think, one of the first people to say that she had this kind of teardrop tinged voice. So it's like, she had this emotion in her voice that really carried through.
That can be heard in literally all of her recordings.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the songs we'll get to, they're actually heartbreaking to listen to. So apparently, she had a little bit of success with that first one. And she had another one then, let me see, where was it now? Her first album, we get to the first album, was Your Good Girl's Gonna Go Bad. And that was released in 1967. And it went to number 3 on the Billboard chart. So you're very familiar with this album?
I'm familiar with the song. Now, every time I'm doing a gig or singing anywhere, I always throw in that song. I love that one. And cool. I think it's one of few lively, happy, fun songs.
Is that where Rihanna got her inspiration, Good Girl Gone Bad?
Possibly so, but I don't think she'd say that.
No, I probably wouldn't. This wouldn't be cool, So yeah, she got two more number 1 singles with My Elusive Dreams, and she has one of her first solo number 1s was I Don't Want to Play House, which was one of the songs I know fairly well of her, which is a tearjerker, you could say. What's your experience of that song? Have you sung it, or
I've never sung that song. I listened to it a few times. It's sad, definitely. I think all her songs, I think, are very personal to her, and everything that's going on in her own personal life, especially Stand By Your Man as well. Whoa, that is raw emotions.
Absolutely. And of course, the I Don't Want to Play House is sung from a point of view of a woman overhearing her little girl tell a playmate, I don't want to play house. It makes my mommy cry because when she played house, my daddy said goodbye. And that's obviously a very, very sad situation. But I suppose it actually earned her a Grammy for Best Female Country and Western Solo Performance. So she's on the right track, I suppose you could say.
Things are kind of starting to look up, but not for long.
Not for long. But at the same time, when you look at the kind of the environment of country music or music in general back in the 60s, it's all very male oriented. It's very run by men, basically.
Yeah, definitely.
And there wasn't a whole lot of time for women on radio. It didn't have, they just didn't want to give them any sort of a bit of limelight at all. And especially, you couldn't play 2 songs by women back to back. That was just like no
go.
Couldn't do that. So she was actually
lucky for me. All that has changed.
Yes, absolutely. There's a wealth of obviously female singers now, especially like brand new singers on the scene like yourself. Well, I wouldn't call you brand new. You've been at for a few years now. But we don't have that problem anymore, thankfully. Anyway, and so I suppose we'll go on to her, as you mentioned just there a few minutes ago, her signature song, which was
Stand By Your Man.
That's the one. Herself and Billy Sherrill, the guy from earlier, Crow wrote the song in just 15 minutes and released in 1968. And it was another number 1 hit Billboard Country Singles Chart. And it crossed over to the pop chart as well. And actually earned her a second and final Grammy, although she would be nominated for 12 more times. So she became huge in the country chart, but I think she was one of the first to actually cross over to the pop chart. And it became a huge song basically for everyone. And became her absolute, standout, her signature song. And so what are your thoughts on the song before we get into, I suppose, the controversy?
I feel like there was probably a lot of women that could relate to it back then, and probably still definitely can relate to it, I'd imagine. And it's very, very emotional song, and you can really hear it in her voice. It's pure kind of raw, you know, she's not holding back.
No.
She's getting it all out there in a song.
Yeah. And did you know she actually didn't want to release it at all? She like begged Billy Sherrill, just don't release that. It's not good enough.
I didn't know that, but do you know what? She was probably embarrassed about the whole, you know.
Well, I don't think it was that. It's even that she wasn't confident in her songwriting abilities.
Yeah.
And she said that she didn't like her high notes. She was like, "Oh no, that's not good."
They were phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know yourself as a singer, you probably hear yourself back and go, "Oh no, what was I thinking?"
Yeah, I literally can't listen to myself back.
You can't.
Don't like it. I think you can probably relate to that as well. A lot of singers that I talk to, they're like, "No, I do not listen back to myself."
Yeah, absolutely. But I have the unfortunate thing, I have to record myself, so I have to listen back and have to, you know, edit and listen
I don't
myself.
envy you.
So I got used to it fairly quick.
Yeah.
But especially like podcasts now, I have to hear myself talk. A lot of people just don't like hearing themselves talk even.
That's like me on the radio as well. I just record it and I'm like, okay, that's grand now. I'm not going back and listening to it. I'll let Daddy listen to it or someone before I send it off, because I just can't listen to myself at all. So I feel like I have the most annoying voice.
Not at all.
I think we all think that about ourselves though.
Yeah, you sound different in your own head. That's a big thing. And then when you hear yourself on tape, it's like, that's me? But you get used to it. You'll be a phenomenal radio personality in no time. You might even have your own podcast one day. You never know.
Who knows?
So, the song became kind of got a bit of controversy. A lot of feminists were kind of giving out about saying, "Oh, no, you're defending your man when he could be out doing anything at all," and all this kind. Especially, it became a thing when in '92, Hillary Clinton was addressing the latest rumors about her husband, Bill Clinton's philandering. Famously quipped, "I'm not sitting here like some little woman standing by my man like Tammy Wynette." So,
ouch.
Yeah. Did you know about that?
No, I did not. Now that was a bit of a blow.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. And that was a disparaging remark, you could say. So
very degrading.
Yeah. And Tammy herself said, "It's unbelievable to me. The song that took me 20 minutes to write, I've spent 20 or 30 years defending it." And she didn't even want to release it in the first place either.
She was probably thinking when all this was going on, she's like, "Oh, I knew I shouldn't have released it."
No, that's it. But yeah, she, I suppose after this then, this is the Stand By Me era. There's a few different eras so you can nearly, categorize her life by. So she had married for a second time a guy called Don Chappell. And
is this her second or third husband?
This is the second. Yeah, this is the second marriage. So Don Chappell, I think this guy, if I'm not mistaken, he was some sort of a real estate mogul or something, but apparently he took her for like a financial ride. And I think it was like 6 weeks later she divorced him. Because
that was not a very long marriage.
No. He's trying to get money out of him, or out of her, let's say. Oh no, sorry, I'm getting mixed up. I think this is like her fourth. That was her fourth husband. It's kind of hard to keep track of these guys sometimes.
Yeah.
It was actually Don Chappell.
Where does George Jones come into the equation? Is he 3 or 4?
He's 3.
No, he's definitely not 5.
No, he's 3. Yeah. So yeah, the guy I just mentioned was 4.
Okay.
Yeah, it's easy to get mixed up. But yeah, so she married Don Chappell, who actually ended up introducing her to the aforementioned George Jones, who at the time was a well-established country singer at the time, yeah. So he had, obviously songs like The Race Is On and He Stopped Loving Her Today, all these absolute classics. And would you be very familiar with George Jones' stuff?
I know a few of the songs that you've mentioned there, but I wouldn't have posters on my wall now or anything like that. No, I just know a few of the songs, and it wouldn't really even be from him singing them. Do you know that sort of way? He Stopped Loving Her Today. I'd be really familiar with that song from Robert Mazzell singing it and Jimmy Buckley. You know,
yes,
so.
yeah. I think Robert does Races On as well. I think
he does. Yeah, it's funny. It's now the race is on and the hair comes prying up the back straight. Reminds me. I always laugh every time I hear that line.
Yeah. So apparently,
Golden Ring actually was a good duet they done.
That's the one. I was trying to think of that one. I remember seeing that a few years ago, and I couldn't think of the name of that song. So thanks for reminding me. But yeah, they go on to have a great duet career. But before we get into that, they met in a recording studio where Mr. Don Chappell, her second husband, introduced them. But apparently, one evening, Don Chappell and Tammy were in their house and they're having a big argument in the kitchen. And George Jones just happened to kind of, pass by and drop in. And Don Chappell called Tammy a bad word. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if he could say it even if it did. But George Jones kind of stood up for her. He's like, hey, you don't talk to her like that. And sure, your man was like, you don't talk to me like that, and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently Tammy declared her love for George, and that's when she left husband number 2 and went to marry husband number 3, George Jones.
That did not go well.
No. And they actually toured together as the Mr. and Mrs. Country Music. And they're also known as the King and Queen of country music. So they're like the royalty, you could say. And they had a daughter who is Tamala Georgette Jones, who is a country singer in her own right as well.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, she's actually come to Ireland a few times and she's recorded duets with some Irish male singers as well, Georgette Jones. Yeah. No, I can't think of any of them off my head, but she definitely has.
I think I was chatting to Ben Troy before. I think he met her one time in the Grand Ole Opry, if I'm not mistaken, if I can remember that correctly. I think she got him to sing, I think, a George Jones song on the stage. Apparently, I'll have to go back and even listen to my own episode of that other podcast. But yeah, apparently she's very, she liked him and got him to sing and all this kind of stuff. So
imagine having Tammy Wynette and George Jones as your parents. Whoa.
That's crazy, right? But I suppose Tammy was, fell in love with George because he was very, very gentle and very generous to begin with, let's say.
Yes.
But unfortunately, George Jones, he was a bit of a demon for the drink. And so when he was drinking, he became very violent and unpredictable. So he was into his bit of alcohol and a bit of cocaine as well. So he became an awful drunk. And he actually chased Tammy around the house with a loaded pistol. And I think he might have fired off a shot or two, but not, thankfully, didn't get her with it, I suppose. But at another point, like George Jones himself, he has, a fantastic, you know what I mean? It's an intriguing backstory of his own. And hopefully I'll get to do a podcast on him someday as well. But there was one point where Tammy had to hide his keys of his car in order to stop him from going down to the local off-license or whatever, liquor store, as they call them in the States, I suppose. Hide his car keys so he wouldn't drive down. But what did George do? He got his ride-on lawnmower and drove down to the liquor store, bottle of whiskey on the way back, off his head, driving
on the lawnmower.
On the lawnmower, yeah. So he was a character, let's say. But I suppose in a public perception, they were the perfect couple. They were like...
There's actually a video on YouTube of them singing Golden Ring. Yeah. And I think it was shortly before they actually divorced. And you can just see it. It's so sad. You can see there's tears. Her eyes are filling with tears. And you can see it's worth watching now. It really is. And read the comments on YouTube. It's so interesting.
I've seen that one actually. Yeah, it's really heartbreaking to watch it because you can see that there is obviously love between the two.
Yeah.
It didn't work between them. He was such a, I suppose, a demon for the drink. He was he was too much to handle. But I suppose the main reason that Tammy stuck out with him for so long was because they publicly were perceived to be the perfect couple and didn't want to let down the fans. Didn't want to let people know that things weren't as perfect as they thought things were behind the scenes. So after a while, they did. It was 6 years actually. 6 years they were together, which would have been a tumultuous.
Probably her longest.
Possibly actually, yeah. On maybe not including her last. Maybe don't know exactly how long the last one was. But yeah, that's one of her longest anyway. I think her shortest was 6 weeks. I think that was the fourth guy.
Yeah.
But what was Britney Spears? That was like a month.
I have no idea.
Something like that. Yeah. So yeah, very short marriages. And this one was 6 years to George Jones. So yeah, he chased her with a rifle, and so they ended up splitting up. But they actually continued working together professionally, duetting, singing "Golden Ring," and what's the other song they had? Apartment what was it? 2-floor house. Oh, name escapes me now.
No, I can't really help you out there, Copper. Sorry.
I should have had this. Yeah, so they continued on for many years herself, and then into the 1970s was, I suppose, called Tammy Wynette's golden age, and she had 20 number one hits. And
wow.
20 and 39 top 10 Billboard country hits, which was, that's prolific for anyone in any genre. And she had her song "Till I Can Make It on My Own," which she actually claimed to be her favorite song. Do you know this one yourself?
I do. It's an absolutely beautiful song. So it is. It's like a powerhouse kind of a song.
And so it was like the title track of her first album, recorded after her divorce from George Jones. So it had lyrics like till I get used to using you, let me keep on using you till I can make it on my own. So it's
some of the lyrics as well, you'd question actually was she even over him? Like someone was like, "I'll need time to get you off my mind," and all this kind of stuff,
Absolutely. And sure, look, isn't country music is 3 chords and the truth, isn't it? That's the old saying. So real life does kind of, even if you don't want it to inspire your lyrics, sometimes it just does.
Yeah.
So it's very easy to get your, I suppose, professional life kind of blurred with your personal life. But actually, after her divorce from Jones, she briefly dated Burt Reynolds. Do you know who Burt Reynolds is by any chance?
Never even heard.
You never heard him? He was.
You look very shocked.
What? Oh well.
I said you look very shocked.
Burt Reynolds was the dude. He was the guy. He was in Deliverance. He was a famous actor, very famous actor in the 70s. He's an icon. He was in Smokey and the Bandit, which is if you like your country music, which you obviously do, you should watch Smokey and the Bandit. You have Jerry Reed in there as well. You know Jerry Reed is Eastbound and Down. He did that song. I think.
Eastbound and Down. I was just going to say I know that song. Yes. The Three Amigos.
The Three Amigos. That's the guys. Yeah. But Jerry Reed did Eastbound and Down, which is from the movie Smokey and the Bandit, and Burt Reynolds starred in that, and he starred in like Deliverance, and just a ton of other films. He was, a guy with big mustache, can look like me, but but they dated for a while, but she saw that there was no future, I suppose. So she actually married then, this is the guy I mentioned earlier, Nashville real estate tycoon Michael Tomlin, and the marriage lasted 44 days. I think I said 4 weeks earlier. I got mixed with me fours. So 44 days. And apparently he kind of basically tried to, leech money over.
Again?
Yeah. So she was, I think I heard someone say she was financially stable, but she wasn't emotionally dependent on herself. Let's say she had to be with a guy. She had to be in a relationship. That's why she got married so many times, I guess. But then that marriage lasted 44 days. So in 78, she married her 5th and final husband. So we're at the final marriage, which is George Ritchie. Yes, we got there in the end. So George Ritchie, who worked as a manager for the rest of her career, and she co-wrote a few songs with him as well. including, ironically, the Till I Can Make It on My Own. And she said of Richie, I made a lot of mistakes, but thank God I finally got it right. So apparently she found happiness.
Fifth time lucky.
Yeah, but apparently there's a few little caveats
Not
to
so
that
lucky.
as well. we'll get to that a bit later too. My God, the fun in learning never ends. But yes, so there was throughout the 70s, this is, I suppose, another era of her life. She described how I think in 1976, two different instruments where someone had broken into their house and turned on every faucet or tap, every sink, every bathtub, every shower, and in the entire house, so it was flooded. And they actually drew like slurs and awful stuff on the walls. And she had, that was two different times that this happened. So I'd be very obviously wary about giving out your address to anyone.
Yeah.
And that actually reminds me of I was on a certain interview on a show. I think you were on it like the week or before or after me anyway. But the guy was like, "Where do you live?" I was like, "Oh, Wexford." "And where exactly?" It's like, "Whoa, hold on."
What's your air code? Can I have your PPS number?
So yeah, you have to be very careful, I suppose. So
yeah,
this is
definitely.
a case in point where people broke into her house and anything could have happened. And a part of the house caught on fire, and the entire back portion of the house that to close it off was completely burned. So yeah, that's yikes. But the fun doesn't stop there. In 1978, she was allegedly abducted at gunpoint from a Nashville mall parking lot, claiming that a masked gunman had beaten and then abandoned her on a country road 80 miles south of the town.
Maybe we shouldn't go to Nashville.
Yeah. You never know. But were you aware that this?
No, I didn't know that. No, I never had a clue about that.
No. I seen a picture of her actually beside Richie, and she had a huge big black bruise on her cheek.
Oh, God.
Fairly bad now. But apparently her daughter, let me see, I'll sort of guess which one was now. One of her, the three of her Wynette's daughters actually said that it could have been a cover-up for Richie himself that could have actually caused the bruising. And they just kind of made up the story that there was kidnapping. But that was never proven. So allegedly, we throw that in. So
allegedly,
yeah. Sued or like,
do you listen to the Two Johnnies podcast?
I don't, but I'm keep meaning to. Is that
it's very funny now. Everything is allegedly.
Yes, can't be too careful. Like, Jesus. Yeah. But Richie vehemently denied these allegations. But it would not be the last time he would face accusations from his stepdaughters regarding their mother. We'll get to that later on. But things kind of went from bad to worse. It's like, this is like...
How can it get worse?
it's crazy. It just keeps getting worse. This is like a tough, a bleak story to start off on. Hopefully people are, liking what they're hearing, I guess. But yeah, she continued to have many health problems throughout her life. Liver problems and gallbladder. And
it's no wonder with all the stress that she endured.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, like she had so much stress throughout her life with all these husbands and, kidnappings and house invasions and awful stuff. So she kind of started taking painkillers, and she would take painkillers just to kind of get through a show or whatever she needed to do. And she ended up going to the Betty Ford Center, which is like back in the day, it was like the celebrity, what would you call it? Rehab clinic of like the 70s, 80s, and 90s. So yeah, she went and she always had this great resolve. She always had this like determination to keep going, to get over whatever, you know, thing was facing her. So she actually did get past this painkiller addiction, and you know, she kept going. She came out all the stronger for it, apparently, and she kept going and she kept making the hits. But I think we'll go on to I think one of my favorite songs that she's done. I don't know if you're even aware of this song, but in '92, she made an unexpected return to the Billboard 100 by providing vocals for the song "Justified and Ancient." Do you know this song, "Justified and
No,
Ancient"?
I thought you were going to say "You Ain't Woman Enough to Take My Man" or something.
Oh, okay. No, this is a bit different. This is I'll add this to the Spotify playlist, and I'd
I'll
recommend
have
you
to
go
have a
listen to
listen
it
to
after
it.
as well.
Yeah.
It was a song by the British electronic duo the KLF, and they were creating this kind of fusion song. It's when you hear it, it's mad. It's kind of a dance, not disco, but kind of a dance song. It's like infused by, has Jimi Hendrix Voodoo Child guitar riff in it, and that goes to it's like a clanging bell in the background, and it's all this weird fusion of music. And they were in the studio and they were thinking, just for the crack, hey, do you know what this song needs? This needs Tammy Wynette. And they didn't know Tammy Wynette, you know. So they made a few phone calls, and I think within 3 phone calls, they were actually talking to Tammy over in Nashville.
Oh, wow.
And they played the song down the phone to her. And she goes, yeah, this sounds like fun. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll sing on it. It's like, okay. So it's a class song. It's like Moo Moo Land. Have you heard that song? It's bound for Moo Moo Land. You probably, if you heard it, you might recognize. I recognize when I heard it from just growing up. I heard the song kind of in the background and not really too familiar with it. But listen to it. It's like, actually, this is class. It's a fun song. And look up the video as well. It has Tammy in this kind of like a queen's dress and a tiara, and she's on this like 50-foot high throne, and there's all these like Asian dancers, Japanese girls around her, and Zulu dancers. And
that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, it's class. I think it's about aliens or something. The song, it's like these aliens are justified and ancient, and they own an ice cream van. It's mad. It's just cuckoo bananas.
So it's probably time enough for something kind of light-hearted from Tammy, you know, with all the other emotional songs.
Exactly. Because all her songs are. We didn't actually mention the song DIVORCE. How did we not mention that song?
One of our main songs,
One of our main songs, yeah. That was and it was like one of the songs that reflected her own life.
Yeah, it really did. 5 divorces. Well, 4.
Yeah, 4. And the 5th one stuck. But yeah, the song itself is like a spelling lesson. You have to kind of keep track.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. D. So it's like, obviously the mother and father are talking about divorce in front of the kid, and they don't want to say the word divorce, so they had to spell it out. You're obviously very familiar. You've no reason to sing
I don't sing this song. No, I only know what's in it.
Yeah. I wouldn't imagine you singing this song.
No. I'm too young to be singing about divorce.
Yeah. Is anyone singing this song on the Irish country scene? It's not.
No, not that I've heard of.
Yeah.
Not that I've heard of.
Yeah. Sure, maybe I'll sing it then.
Yeah, you may as well.
But yeah, that was one of her big songs as well. But yeah, this is early 90s, 92. She sang this Justified and Ancient, which I actually fell in love with. It's a great song. Yeah. And she said that it was actually her most like satisfying project to work on outside of country music. She did it for the fun of it, and it actually became a hit. And you know, she became this, like, for a time, a queen of pop as well as the queen of country. But these KLF guys, these are the guys that put out the song. They were interesting guys. Apparently, they announced their departure from the music business at a Brit Awards ceremony, and they fired machine gun blanks into the audience. And they left a dead sheep on the steps of a hotel hosting an after-show party. And the also later burned the bulk of their earnings from record sales, £1 million in cash.
They burnt money.
They burnt money. I'm picturing it like, you know, that the Batman film, the Dark Knight, where you have Joker was like set fires like the mountain of cash. I can picture it like that. So these guys are bonkers. So you can imagine what the song sounds like. Yeah, Jeannie Mac. But yeah, let me see, we're going up to her health problems. Yeah, so the health problems basically kept going until she finally passed away. April
55.
6th. That's correct. April 6th, 1998.
Right, too young.
Too young. Imagine, what would she be now if she's still alive? She's probably 80s, 1942. Are you good at maths?
No, you're asking the wrong person.
So nice. So 60. She'd be, about 79, give or take.
She should be still alive.
Yeah. So apparently she was just sitting, watching TV, fell asleep, and she had a blood clot in her lung.
In her lung,
so she passed away in her sleep, which was sad.
I don't know if this is fact or fiction, but it said her body was exhumed.
Yes.
Is that true? Okay, I honestly, that was so great. I didn't even know if it was true or false.
Yeah, that's true. That's the reason was, coming back to Mr. Ritchie, her fifth husband, apparently her stepdaughters accused him of, well, first of all, they accused her of kind of keeping Tammy away from friends and family, kind of being overprotective, kind of, keeping her to himself kind of thing. And so they actually said, let me see, I'll just kind of get this right now first before. So they tried very hard to separate Mom from her family and friends so he could be the only person she could turn to. I think she felt like she had no choice and it was too difficult to fight. And he could have encouraged her to overuse painkillers, which was indirectly responsible for her death. So they actually ended up filing a $50 million wrongful death lawsuit against Ritchie, and her body was exhumed, which Janie Mac, you couldn't even let her rest, like after all this torment. It was like just so grisly. Body was exhumed and examined, and the results confirmed that Wynette had died of natural causes, in brackets, heart failure. So they dropped the lawsuit then in 1999. So that was the life.
That was a very heavy topic for the first podcast.
Heavy. Oh my God. So poor Tammy. And you can just hear all that pain in her voice when you...
In her voice, you really can.
Yeah. So, like, obviously, I think you're going to be like the potential Irish queen of country music. But let's hope that you don't have to go through any of this.
Hopefully not.
Torture.
Mother, oh, that was... drive anyone mad.
Yeah. I don't know how she apparently, as I said earlier, she had this like steely resolve to just keep going. And
that's crazy. She had to be mentally tortured.
Yeah. I don't think we mentioned that when she was kind of starting off on the road, she had to, when she had her three kids, she actually ended up getting this like old tour bus, like an old tour bus that had no heating. And so the family lived on the bus while they traveled around the country. She was doing gigs. And she couldn't even hire a driver, so she drove the bus. And
crazy.
She was so like, she's an absolute inspiration. How she just got through all of this.
And we think we've problems.
Yeah, we think we've it bad, I suppose. Yeah. But yeah, what are your thoughts on everything you've learned, Ashling?
I'm absolutely blown away by all of that. There was so much that I didn't know. Some of it I did know, but you're really after opening my eyes, and I can I have a better understanding now of where all her music really came from, and the songs she wrote herself. They were actually like, they really, really applied to her life and everything she was after going through.
Yeah,
it was all a reflection.
Yeah. And are you starting to write your own songs as well? Have you released any of your own songs yet? I
haven't released any of my own songs, no, but in college, one of my modules is actually songwriting. So I have been tipping away, doing a few. I don't think I have any masterpieces just yet, but hopefully in the not too far future, I'll have some of them ready or nearly ready, or I think as well with songwriting, you're kind of your own worst critic,
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, I think the trick is just write down what you'd like to hear, and don't think about, oh, what's Mary down the road going to think about when she hears this? Like, just don't think of it that way. Just go, like, even write down a whole song, and even just think in your head, this is never going to see the light. It's never going to see the light, and just write it down without judging yourself too much. And you just kind of put it down on the page, and if you don't like it, just turn the page and start writing a new one. And if you do like it, put it out there, and happy days, hopefully.
Topper, now when I have my first hit, I'll owe it all to you. My first original, hopefully.
Oh, first original, yeah. No, but and hopefully you won't be writing any songs as terribly sad as poor Tammy.
No, but Standing By My Man, or DIVORCE.
Yes. Have you actually, like, what songs did you say you do of hers live? Or do you do any songs? You do Stand By Your Man.
Of Tammy's, I do Stand By Your Man as one of them, and until I can make it on my own, I do sometimes. Now it's not really, I don't know, it's not really a lively number. It's more of a concert song, as is Stand By Your Man.
Yeah.
They're kind of big hitters.
Yeah. Fair play. And again, thanks so much for joining me.
No problem at all. I'm after having a great education there for the last hour.
Yeah, hopefully people don't come out too depressed out of this episode. Hopefully we had, had some crack along the way. I hope. But again, if you'd like to tell the listeners, where can they find you and your music and your videos and everything?
Yeah, so Facebook is Aishling Rafferty Music, as is my YouTube. So you can find me there, and you can keep up to date with wherever I'm playing or my new releases and all that sort of stuff. New videos, they'll all be there. And then, of course, my Instagram is just Aishling Rafferty. So it's nice and plain. And that's them all. Brilliant.
And I'd highly suggest people go out and listen to Aishling. She lovely music. Her voice is angelic, I would say. And I'm not just saying that because she's sitting in front of me. I actually really like sitting in front of me virtually, let's say. But it's a great music. And I think one of my favorites now is the Darling Say You Love Me When I'm Old. That's like a song that you wish Tammy could have written. You wish she would have had that too.
That happiness kind of,
yes, happiness. Absolutely.
Unfortunately not. But...
Absolutely. But again, thanks very much for joining me, Ashling. And thanks for listening to the lovely listener that's listening right now. If you'd like to follow the podcast, go over to our Facebook and Instagram. It's Copper's Corner Podcast. And I'll be uploading this to YouTube and go over I suppose they're already listened to it. There's no point in saying where it's going to be. But
well, just in case.
Just in case. Yeah, we're going to have the video on the YouTube and the audio on the Spotify and Apple Podcast. Anywhere you can get your podcast. And I will create a Spotify playlist that will have some Tammy Wynette songs on it. And I'll be adding songs to it of future topics as we keep going. And I'll be talking to lots of other people in the future. And it'll be all sorts of genres as well. It won't be just country, but country... Like, the more I learn about country is like mind blowing, like that Tammy Wynette story. And if you get, dig deep into like George Jones and Johnny Cash, and stories are phenomenal. But we'll be talking about all sorts of music. And you never know, Ashling, we can get you back when we talk about someone else in the future as well.
Brilliant. I'd love that, Topper. And thanks very much for having me on today as well. I was thrilled.
Thanks very much for coming on. And so thanks very much for listening. And we'll see you next time. And that's a goodbye from me and a goodbye from Ashling.
Bye. Thanks for listening.